So whether you're doing independent adoption, you're doing agency, you have to be your own advocate. You're the one that has to go out there and kind of fend for yourself and find what you need and gather that information. So do you mind sharing a little bit about what you did, what worked, what you found to be helpful? How did you do that?
As far as help me get through the adoption after?
Or advocating for yourself, learning, educating yourself as you're going through the process.
Again, I went to the library because at the time that was all that really was available. And I went through every book that I could find that had anything to do with adoption, which was usually social workers or psychologists that had written books based on the process and the grieving process. But nothing was specific as to what was right or wrong, or, it was, at that time, it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. And, the birth mother was kind of thrown under the rug. And I think being an advocate for myself, I was determined to change that stigma for me. Right. And honestly, I didn't think, 20-some odd years later, I'd be in this position advocating from a different aspect, but I advocated for myself in the sense that I didn't want to be the norm. I didn't want her to think that she wasn't loved, and I didn't want these parents to think that they were on their own, and I wanted to be a part of it. And this child was a gift. It's not a piece of property. It's a gift, and that's what bothered me through that process. So to fight up against that and to go against everybody's old mentality of what adoption was, I really had to stand up on my own, and there was a lot of lonely nights and a lot of emotions that went through it. And even the day that I had given birth, I still was up against a lot of naive people and a lot of stigma that was really difficult for me to just hold with my decision. And I think that's more of a spiritual thing that you have to hold within yourself and self-worth. Even though you feel like you're at your lowest, I felt like I was not going to give up. I was not going to give up. And it was basically for my child. I was not going to let this child down. Right. I already felt like I had, failed in so many ways. So this was my way of standing up and putting my foot down and going against, obviously, all the odds of the stigma of adoption.
Well, again, at that time, right then, that was when they were right in the middle of doing a ton of research on open adoptions. I mean, it was in the middle of the studies that you were coming in. So there was no information that was new out. They didn't have anything to record to say this is positive or negative. They were just trying it back east. That's really when they were just starting open adoption. And so what you were looking at is there was no information available on if it was healthy for you, if it was healthy for the child, and because nobody else had ever heard about it, you were fighting everybody's social norms.
It was. I call it the cloud. I call it the cloud of shame and guilt, because everybody figured, well, she's unwed and she's single, and so you felt like there was always this cloud that was always cloudy, and this a feeling of guilt, and shame and guilt. So I that's how I refer to it, is this cloud of shame and guilt, that I felt like I couldn't walk out from underneath, because it was like permanently, felt like it stuck there, and I have to step outside myself and go, I can walk out from underneath this cloud. You can keep the cloud. But that was really difficult, because even the nurses and a lot of doctors still didn't understand. And I very much lucked out. I happen to know the doctor really well as a friend, so he was very supportive in that process. But for me, that was my advocacy of sticking with it and going up against all those odds and making sure that it was done correctly for her best interest. But
I think nowadays it's almost even shifted a little bit more to the person who has to kind of push against societal norms now is the one that's choosing to place and choosing to place in an open adoption, and that there's a lot of stigma to that. It's like there's always stigma to adoption. It's just the different reasons why,
exactly.
And now it's nobody really blinks an eye when somebody gets pregnant when they're not married. But to say I'm going to place for adoption, that's a really difficult thing. And I think
here comes the cloud.
No matter it's a different cloud.
It's just different.
But now, the strength that you're displaying right now is still the strength that you have to have, and the determination to say, I know what's right for me, whether it's to force people to allow you to have an open adoption or force people to allow you to be okay with placing. You have to say, I know what I want, I know what I need, and I'm going to get it. And it's not selfish and it's not crazy. It's being a normal person that is going to get what they need.
And it's something you have to remind yourself sometimes on a monthly basis and sometimes on an hourly basis of, not second guessing yourself and telling yourself, because it's amazing how many people are really naive and aren't knowledgeable about what adoption is, and how many people still, when I first stepped out, I want to call it, of the darkness and stepped into the light and said, hey, I'm a birth mom after this many years. How many other women came out of the woodwork and still didn't want to step into the light because of the shame and feeling judged against their own peers or family members that had no concept of it. And my heart really hurts for them, because I thought, that's kind of like a cancer. You keep that secret for so long, it's going to do something to you, whether it's mentally or physically. And I've seen the damage. I've been through some of that damage, and how great it is that we can be able to talk about it and say, it's safe, it's okay, here's where you can come to, or here's where you can go talk about it.
Well, and I think that's a big thing, is because for the first time on Birth Mother's Day, I met a birth mom who had placed over 10 years ago. I mean, I really didn't know many people that had placed, even up to 20 years ago. And she was a birth mom of 25 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never met a birth mom who has placed that long ago. So
there's a lot out there.
Came out of the woodwork. Exactly. It's shocking how they.
But how did you go against the adversity of the whole process? How was your?
I surrounded myself with the women that I knew had placed and got their stories. I needed to listen to them and find out what they did to help themselves through it, what worked with them as far as like their openness that they had post placement, and how it was helping them or how it was hurting them. Like if I could see that they were upset and that if things weren't going the way they wanted to, how it was working out. I just needed to know what their heart was going to do, because our heart breaks already when we place these children. Right. And so I'm like, am I going to be able to do this after? Do I need a lot of information, or do I need just a little bit of information? So I talked to the different ones. I talked to the girl that had a completely closed adoption, who did not even hold her baby after it was born. I talked to the girl who nursed and then placed, and all those things. It was important to know what people what they needed to figure out what I felt I was going to need.
You choose, first you have to choose the option that you're going to do: parenting, placement, whatever, getting married, and all these things. And then there's options within the options, and so educating yourself, finding out what those options are. I think that's how you be an advocate. You ask a lot of questions. You talk to a lot of people.
I don't know about, maybe you can, jump in on this if you're okay with me asking the question, is have you found that a lot of these birth mothers who had placed, how enormously courageous all these women are? The selfless act that they made, that I knew I made, but to see it in other women is such an encouragement to know that people don't understand. There's a rare group of women who stepped outside of themselves and made this enormous sacrifice that was for the best interest of this child. And that goes above and beyond what most women, let alone any person, can comprehend. And so when I see these other birth mothers, I just have this enormous respect for who they are and the women they've become and the things they've accomplished, and to be able to talk about it openly and to feel good about their decision and to have that support group after 25 years, it's a relief to know, hey, I wasn't in this by myself. I did okay. I did great. And that I'm not the unique one,
Well, and I hate being I don't like being pointed out as this courageous person. Like, don't call me that, but I will call every other person, every other birth mom or birth parent. It's like my favorite thing to do. I just love them. And it's exactly that. It's seeing them and seeing what they did. And I guess it's the numbers, like how few people place.
I have a really hard time not just grabbing every single birth parent that I ever meet and just giving them the longest, most awkward hug in the world. It's like,
see, but then we want to hug the adopted parents because it's like, oh, you're so great. You love these babies. You love their moms.
It is. It's this enormous amount of love that I've always been an advocate myself. When I look at women and think, if you could put back all your insecurities and think nothing about yourself, and have love and respect for, not just yourself, but other women. Imagine the army of women we would have. And that's exactly how I look at these birth mothers, is these are enormously unique army of women who people don't understand the kind of respect that we deserve, and not to be thrown under the carpet or called names, and that we have something to offer. We're just like every other human being. Yeah, it's, I don't want to refer to it as in the military, but it's kind of that same process of, we did something unique and we did something courageous, and it was heartbreaking, and it's still, whether anyone wants to admit it, is an emotional heartbreak that you will deal with for the rest of your life. And so I call a different type of PTSD because we do have to relive that, and we do have to go over that, and we do have to constantly remind ourselves, and to surround yourself around women who are like you. It kind of helps your self-worth and to keep you going on that same track. Whereas
to reiterate that you are okay, and that this choice was okay, and it was a good one, and that those children are okay, and that they're being raised by loving parents, and that you're okay, that you don't have them, that it's okay.
Those moments of insecurity go away quicker with that support than going days thinking, am I crazy?
Absolutely.